CGI, commonly known as computer-generated images, often gets a bad rep. But in the early 1990s, a lot of animated studios looked at CGI as a tool to tell new stories. While a lot of people would associate the rise of CGI with Pixar, there is one Canadian show that put CGI on the map. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to reboot! The show's premise is inherently tied to technology. The series follows the adventures of a guardian by the name of Bob, and his companions Enzo and Dot Matrix as they work to keep the computer system of Mainframe and its citizens safe from the viruses known as Megabyte and Hexadecimal. Sure, looking at it now, the show might appear to have a primitive animation, but in the mid-1990s, this show was on the edge of innovations, predating even Pixar's Toy Story, which would cement CGI's capabilities. The setting is in the inner world of a computer system known by its inhabitants as Mainframe. It was deliberately chosen, due to technological constraints at the time, as the fictional computer world and allowed for blocky-looking models with mechanical animation.
Basically, if you're a kid and you fire up a computer, you hear all these sort of noises going on and the hard drive clicks on and you're wondering what goes on inside of it. And what we did was took that question of what goes on inside of a computer and imbued that answer with characters.
The premise for the show came from the medium that the show was produced in. We knew because as soon as we said to people, well, it's set inside a computer, they went, oh, right, that's why it looks like that, of course, yeah, silly me. The ironic thing is that as the show took a good 9 or 10 years to get off the ground, during which time computer animation developed and got better and better and better. So by the time we actually produced the show, you could do shiny objects, and you could do shadows, and you could do multiple light sources and curvy things.
But the series' CGI aesthetic worked fittingly with the show's themes and settings, making it very much stand out from the other Saturday morning cartoons. In a way, it was depicting technology as we perceived it in the early 1990s. Produced by Mainframe Entertainment, Reboot was the first half-hour computer-animated TV series. Reboot originally was conceived in 1980 by the British creative collective The Hub, made up of John Grace, Phil Mitchell, Ian Pearson, and Gavin Blair. The latter two were no strangers to CGI since they worked on the music video Money for Nothing by Dire Straits. The finished product won multiple awards, including Video of the Year at the 3rd MTV Video Music Awards, and was considered groundbreaking for its use of computer animation.
That was groundbreaking at the time, right? I mean, it was huge.
Although John chose to remain in England to work on other projects, the rest of the group moved to Vancouver to make Reboot, which soon entered pre-production. 3D animation tests began in the early 1990s until the show developed its detailed look.
Please understand something. When we went into ABC to sell them the show, the longest piece of computer animation in the world was about 2.5 minutes. Which was a National Film Board sponsored, and here in Canada, short called The Piano.
There was nothing like it, and we really were the first, and it was an amazing feeling after so long to finally get it on air.
Production would continue on the future episodes, and the show finally aired in 1994. As you could imagine, this was a painstaking process, as no other company had at this time worked on a 3D animation project of this scale, and the software was new to all in the company.
We had no idea what the show was going to cost, because what we didn't really grasp was we had to create the technology to make the show, and the technology was non-existent.
In fact, much of Reboot's $6 million cost had gone on setting up the computer program.
We had to build all the characters, we had to build all the sets, locations, props, everything, and work out how we were going to make the characters talk, develop the software to make the characters talk, etc., etc., etc.
Production-wise, that was a big challenge. It was really fun that each episode would have a different game in it, for example, but that meant that for each show, for every week, we had to build, design, build, and animate a new bunch of either character for the users, redress our main characters as the game characters, and build the game set. Be it a racetrack or a dungeon or whatever we were doing that week.
We averaged out at 8 weeks an episode, and some of the early episodes, because we were very much under the gun in terms of delivery, we're always behind schedule. Some of those early episodes we managed to crank out in, one of them we did in less than a week, I think.
The show was under constant pressure from the network in efforts of making the show more kid-friendly.
We made this show as a total rebellion against everything, including network standards and practices. You know, we were called in, I was called in, and I had the head of Saturday morning, I had the head of programming, head of standards and practices, and the head of business affairs, all in the same room, and they're all looking like they wanted to give me a cigarette and a blindfold. And they were saying, look, these women have breasts. And the first thing I thought about was, well, it's not exactly a breast, it's a mono breast. I said, but I'd like to ask you a question. And I was kind of prepped by an inside friend of a network that this is what the conversation was going to lead to. So I brought a Barbie doll, and it was in my pocket. And I pulled it out and I said, I am sure all of us before age 3 have done this. And I pulled the top of Barbie down, showing what would be perhaps breasts to some of us. And the room went silent, and Barbie, actually, I think we have the credit for putting breasts on Saturday morning, because it was Barbie that I proved that children were well aware of breasts at an early age.
Sadly, and I do mean sadly, the show was canceled after its 4th season. But it proved that full CGI is not only possible, but also a success. Thus, it gave birth to future CGI series that would continue to push the boundaries of CGI cartoons.
I'd love to see Reboot come back somehow in some form. I'd love to see it, whether it's a movie or even a TV movie, another series, whatever. I'd love for it to continue, to return and to continue. As long as it stays true to itself and to its origins and to its past.
So is anyone else excited for a reboot of Reboot? Yeah, I got nothing funny to say this video. Glitch! Outro! Okay, nothing happened. It never does, but that don't stop me from trying it in my everyday life. Like, glitch, sandwich, or glitch, more money. It might actually work one day, and when it does, I'll be here to tell you all about it, so be sure to subscribe to Totally Awesome Geeks. Check out the description for links to our Patreon, our TeePublic, and social media. Stay awesome, geeks!